I feel fairly comfortable saying, no question, a lot of people are feeling a lot of pressure right now. I don't know about you, but I like to help how and where I can. I think that Queenslanders generally, that seems to be the feeling. But what about if you don't have the right skills to actually help? Or what if you have a lot on your own plate and you just don't have the emotional bandwidth to help? Psychology consultant and author Dr. Jo Lukens is with me. Thanks for being with me today.
Good to speak with you, Susan.
So why is it so hard to help someone when we feel like we don't have the skills or that emotional bandwidth ourselves?
It's an interesting phenomenon, isn't it? It's almost like we've got rules for ourselves that we don't have for anybody else. The idea that for us to help someone else, we need to be the strong one, we need to be qualified with the best answers, or we find it really hard when we are ourselves, as you mentioned, when we're tired or we're uncertain or we're emotional. So sometimes the fear of making it worse or not knowing the right things to say can sometimes help us, or cause us, I should say, to hold back in helping others.
What does helping actually mean in this context, do you think?
Yeah, I think that's such a great question, because if we broaden how we help others, then we can see that there's lots of small ways that we can help that don't necessarily take a lot of the load from us. So sometimes helping can be about fixing something or rescuing someone from a situation or having the answers that someone needs. But one of the things I've found in my career, and I've worked in psychology for a long time, I used to do lots of individual counselling with people, and hopefully my skill set was fairly broad in that area. But the biggest thing that I used to do that used to help people was I just sit and listen to them. And I think that the time that it takes from us to sit and listen to someone is such a gift for somebody else. And so maybe sometimes rather than saying that when we help someone it's that we need to sort something out, maybe it's just spending some time being with someone, and that's what can be really helpful for people.
That's a really interesting point, because sometimes listening is an important step, but you feel like you need to go that step further. But how do you support that loved one without taking on their whole emotional load?
Yes, so that's the thing, isn't it, that we want to support, we want to listen, we want to hear, but we don't want to overly absorb, because what that does for us is it doesn't really help the other person so much, and it certainly doesn't help us. When the term we use in psychology is to be empathic to somebody else, so that's that notion of trying to understand what it is from their point of view, even though we may not be going through the particular situation ourselves. I always think it's a really important thing for any of us to do when we notice that we're supporting someone, is to hear it, but also to be very careful about how much we take on. And that listening piece is a really useful way for us to assist other people, and we don't necessarily have to carry the whole of the load for others, because it doesn't actually end up helping in the long run anyway.
The term boundaries has become a bit of a buzzword these days, especially on social media. But what are boundaries, but what role do they play when we're trying to help somebody else but feel perhaps overwhelmed?
Yeah, I love that one. So boundaries are really important. And so what boundaries do is it helps us to understand, but then perhaps the person we're supporting as well, helps everyone to understand how far our help can reach and where the point comes where we need to stop the helping or to dial it back a little bit. Boundaries often come with that other word that is a little bit tricky to say, which is funny because it's such a short little word. I think you know what I'm going to say.
I know where you're going.
Two letters. You know where I'm heading with this. I've dropped enough breadcrumbs. So it's about saying no, isn't it? Because if we don't say no to something, then by default we're saying yes, and maybe we are taking on more than we need to. So I guess the little gentle question I always ask myself in scenarios is, if a situation feels like it isn't working, if I feel like I'm carrying too much load, or I feel like I'm needing to do more than required, the first thing I do is I pop a little mental mirror up in front of myself and I ask myself the question, Jo, what is it that you're doing that's allowing this to happen? And that really helps me to go, okay, before I get cross at the other person who's taking up a lot of time or whatever the thing might be, I go, hang on, how did this come about? And then sometimes what we need to do is we need to reset boundaries. We might find that we're committing more time than we have or than we need to, or maybe it actually helps someone else if we don't solve and help all the challenges that they have.
Not helping is maybe helping.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And learning lessons. I think that's such a great lesson that we learn in parenting. Sometimes we need to set boundaries around how we do and don't help our children, because part of the lesson is learning how they can help themselves. What we want to do in parenting is also be that soft place to land.
You're hearing from psychology consultant Dr. Jo Lukens. We can sometimes also just reach out to people in the terms like, I'm thinking of you, or letting them know that you are conscious of them, even if you are maybe dealing with a lot yourself. But how can you also look after your own mental health while supporting others?
Yes, incredibly important. And I know I'm not the first one to say this, but the advice you get on a plane when you're flying is the safety briefing is the advice we need to think about every day. When they say about in the event of unexpected turbulence, the mask will drop, and we all know that it tells us to put them on ourselves before helping others. And that's such good advice, particularly when we are a carer, when we are empathic to the needs of others, is part of helping others is looking after ourselves first. And it really is true that we need to fill our own cup, we need to look after ourselves, we need to make sure we're getting sleep and nutrition and all the things that we know about. But those are the things that are first to go and the easiest things to give up when we prioritise other people over ourselves. But the way I sometimes phrase it to people to help them to, I guess, move towards some of those actions is to remind ourselves that to look after others, we need to look after ourselves first.
What do you hope that people will take away from this conversation today?
Yeah, so helping isn't a activity in perfection. So anything that we are doing that is trying to support others. So it doesn't have to be perfect help. It just needs to be whatever we can give of ourselves in a particular moment. And just to remember that it's the listening, it's the not being judgmental, and it's also making sure that we're reaching out to others when we need help as well. So I guess if people can take a couple of points from there, that would be great.
Dr. Jo Lukens, psychology consultant and author, thank you very much for your time today.
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. And if you or someone you know need help, you can call Lifeline on 13 11 14. You can also contact Beyond Blue on 1300 22 46 36 or head to beyondblue.org.au.